great to have you here today. Let me ask you a question right at the start. Have you ever wondered why fasting doesn't always work for weight loss? People try it, they stay disciplined, yet the results are nowhere near what they expect. It's frustrating, and for many it becomes discouraging. But the real issue often isn't with fasting itself, it's with what happens once the fast ends. The number one mistake people make when fasting is simple, but surprisingly common: overeating during the eating window. Now, this isn't about a lack of willpower or not fasting hard enough. In fact, this mistake happens to both beginners and people who've been fasting for years. Even scientific studies, when you look closely, reveal that this trap can completely cancel out the benefits of fasting. So why does this happen? It's not just hunger or craving, it's actually tied to how our body's hormones, especially insulin, respond after a fast. Understanding this gives us an entirely different perspective on weight loss. Over the next few minutes, we'll dive into why overeating happens so easily, how insulin plays a central role, what the latest research shows, and most importantly, practical strategies you can use to break out of this cycle. When we look closely, fasting isn't just about not eating for a period of time, it's about what happens when you finally do eat. And that's where the real story begins. So let's start with why this mistake is so easy to fall into. When most people think about fasting, they see it as simply skipping meals, almost like a longer version of dieting. But fasting is much more than that. It's a completely different metabolic state. It's not just about eating less food, but about giving the body time to switch fuel sources. Normally, when we eat, the body runs on the energy that comes directly from food, mainly in the form of glucose. But when we fast and no food is coming in, the body is forced to tap into its stored energy. And that stored energy is body fat. A helpful way to picture this is with money. Imagine you always carry cash in your wallet. Whenever you want to buy something, you spend the cash right away. It's quick and easy. That's like eating regularly and always using the food energy that's immediately available. But what happens when your wallet is empty? You don't stop spending, you just go to the bank and withdraw money from your savings account. That's exactly what fasting allows your body to do. Instead of panicking when there's no food coming in, your body smoothly transitions from spending the cash of recent meals to withdrawing from the savings account of stored body fat. Now here's where hormones play a key role, and insulin is the central player. Insulin is the hormone that signals whether the body should store fat or burn fat. When you eat, especially foods high in refined carbohydrates and sugar, insulin rises. This tells the body to take that incoming energy and store it mainly in the liver and fat cells. While insulin levels are high, your body is in storage mode. It wants to save energy rather than use it. That's why many people struggle with weight loss when they eat frequently. Insulin never gets a chance to drop and fat stores remain locked away. When you fast, however, insulin naturally falls, and when insulin falls, the signal flips. The body is no longer told to store energy. Instead, it's told to release energy. Fat cells open up, stored glucose in the liver is released, and the body finally gains access to its reserves. This is the real magic of fasting, not just eating fewer calories, but changing the hormonal environment so fat burning can actually happen. Think about it like a locked fridge. If insulin is always high, the fridge is locked tight no matter how much food you have inside. You can cut calories, exercise, or try harder, but you're still hungry because the fridge won't open. Fasting lowers insulin and unlocks that fridge. Suddenly, your body can access the food already stored inside your fat. That's why people often notice that fasting feels different from standard dieting. Hunger tends to fade after the first adjustment period, and energy levels often rise. The body isn't starving, it's simply feeding itself from a different source. This shift in fuel source is the true benefit of fasting. It explains why people can go without food for long stretches of time and still function perfectly well. Our ancestors relied on this system for survival. Food wasn't always available on demand, and the human body had to be flexible. burning food energy when it was present, switching to stored fat when it wasn't. In today's world, with constant snacking and frequent meals, most people never make that switch. Insulin remains elevated, fat stays locked away, and weight gain becomes almost inevitable. By fasting, you're not just skipping a meal, you're triggering a deep metabolic shift. You're telling your body to put down the wallet and go to the bank. You're lowering insulin, unlocking stored energy, and allowing fat burning to happen the way nature intended. This is why fasting works and why it can succeed where simple calorie cutting so often fails. It's not about eating less, but about letting your body tap into the energy it already has. One of the most common questions people ask about fasting is, if I fasted all day, why can't I just eat whatever I want afterwards? On the surface, it feels logical. You skipped meals, created a big calorie gap, so surely you can fill it however you like. But here's the trap: overeating after fasting can actually cancel out nearly all the benefits, and the reason comes down once again to insulin and how the body handles energy. Let's go back to the idea of fasting lowering insulin. When insulin drops, your body unlocks its fat stores, burning them for energy. That's the whole point. But the moment you overeat, especially with foods rich in carbs and sugar, insulin spikes back up. High insulin immediately shifts the body back into storage mode, which means the fat burning switch you worked so hard to turn on gets flipped right back off. Instead of continuing to use stored fat, your body now has to deal with the flood of new calories you just gave it. Consider two simple scenarios. Imagine someone fasts for 20 hours. In the first scenario, they break the fast with a normal, balanced meal, enough to satisfy hunger, maybe 1,000 calories. Since the body burned about 2,000 calories over the day, they're still in a deficit. Insulin rises moderately, but not excessively, and the body continues dipping into fat stores to make up the difference. That fast worked beautifully. Now, in the second scenario, the person fasts for 20 hours but then eats a massive feast, say 500 calories in one sitting. Suddenly, they've not only covered the energy they burned all day, but overshot it by 500 calories. Insulin spikes much higher to handle the big intake, locking the fat stores again. The body has no reason to burn fat anymore because it's drowning in new energy. That carefully maintained fast essentially gets erased, and the scale often shows no progress at all. Think of it like paying off debt. Fasting is like making a big payment toward your credit card balance. If you follow it with careful spending, your balance shrinks and you make real progress. But if you celebrate by maxing out the card again, you're back where you started, or worse. The bank doesn't care that you made a payment if you instantly pile on new charges. The body works the same way. It doesn't keep a fasting reward points system. It only responds to the balance between what comes in and what goes out. Another way to see it is with a fuel tank. Fasting drains the tank, forcing your body to burn what's stored. But overeating after a fast is like filling the tank all the way up and then spilling extra gasoline on the ground. The tank wasn't empty, it just had space freed up. By dumping in more than it needs, the body stores the excess as fat, essentially wasting all the effort you put into fasting. This is why fasting isn't a free pass to binge. Yes, fasting gives you more flexibility, and yes, you can enjoy food without obsessing over strict restrictions. But the principle still holds if you flood your body with too much energy in one sitting. You'll undo the very process fasting was meant to create. The takeaway is clear. Fasting works because it lowers insulin, unlocks fat stores, and allows the body to burn what it already has. But overeating after fasting raises insulin too high, stops fat burning, and leaves you right where you started. To get the benefits, you don't need to eat like a bird. You just need to stay balanced. Break the fast with a reasonable meal, satisfy your hunger, and let your body continue drawing from its savings account of fat. That's how fasting turns into lasting progress instead of a frustrating cycle of 2 steps forward and 2 steps back. One of the biggest myths in nutrition is the idea that a calorie is just a calorie. We hear it all the time: weight loss is nothing more than calories in versus calories out. On paper, it looks perfectly logical. If you burn more than you eat, the scale should go down. But the human body isn't a simple math equation. It's a dynamic hormonal system. And the way your body responds to calories depends heavily on when you eat, how often you eat, and most importantly, what those calories do to your insulin levels. Take the common advice of eating 6 small meals a day. The argument is that it keeps metabolism high and prevents hunger from getting out of control. But what actually happens in the body is very different. Every time you eat, even a tiny snack, insulin rises. It doesn't matter if it's only 200 calories of healthy food. That repeated stimulation of insulin keeps the body locked in storage mode. If insulin never comes down, fat stores remain sealed. The body can't access them, no matter how many calories you cut. This is why many people feel stuck even when they're doing everything right with portion control. They're still feeding constantly, and insulin never has a chance to drop. Now compare that with fasting. During the fast, insulin falls, and when it falls, lipolysis, the release of stored fat, can finally take place. The fat cells literally open their doors and release energy back into the bloodstream. That's the crucial difference. It's not just about the calorie math, it's about whether your body is hormonally permitted to tap into fat stores. If insulin is high, the doors stay locked. If insulin is low, the doors open. Imagine you're carrying a backpack full of food, but every time you get hungry, someone hands you a snack. You never actually dip into the backpack because you're constantly supplied from the outside. That's what grazing 6 times a day does. It prevents you from using the fuel you already have stored. Fasting, on the other hand, is like saying, "No thanks, I'll eat later," which forces you to unzip that backpack and finally use the food you've been carrying around all along. This is why people often feel liberated once they understand fasting isn't simply about eating less. If it were just calories, then eating 800 calories in 6 small meals should produce the exact same effect as eating 800 calories in 2 meals within a fasting window. But they don't produce the same effect. The second approach lowers insulin for long stretches of the day, giving fat cells time to release energy. The first approach keeps insulin elevated almost constantly, blocking fat release. Same calories, very different results. The scientific explanation is simple but powerful. Insulin is a storage hormone. When insulin is present, it tells fat cells to hold on to their contents. Lipolysis, the breakdown of fat for energy, can't happen in the presence of high insulin. This is why people with chronically high insulin levels often struggle with obesity despite eating less than they burn. The fat is locked away, and the body feels as if it's starving even while carrying excess weight. It's not a willpower issue. It's a hormonal barrier. Reframing fasting as a hormonal strategy helps shift the perspective. It's not a dieting trick, and it's not about torturing yourself by skipping meals. It's about creating a hormonal environment where the body is free to do what it's designed to do. Alternate between burning food and burning stored energy. Calories matter, yes, but hormones decide whether those calories are stored or burned. And that's why fasting works in a way simple calorie cutting often doesn't. Some studies tout fasting as revolutionary for weight loss, but dig deeper and a pattern emerges. Many of the trials allowed participants to eat whatever they wanted during their eating window. That sounds easy, and maybe even liberating. But when researchers permit free for all meals without guidance, the real impact of fasting gets clouded. These designs often lead to disappointing results, not because fasting doesn't work, but because the protocol unintentionally promotes overeating during the window. What seemed like metabolic magic instead becomes a cycle of restriction and rebound, all masked under the label of fasting fail. Real-world clinical settings tell a different story. When patients are asked to fast, but also given clear advice to eat mindfully, not to gorge, not to make up for it, but simply to eat normally, the outcomes are notably better. The fasting sets the stage by lowering insulin, and the mindful intake during the eating window preserves that hormonal advantage, so fat burning continues instead of being immediately reversed. It's not fasting plus abandonment, it's fasting paired with awareness and balance. To illustrate, imagine hitting reset on your metabolism each day with fasting, only to then slam the accelerator by overloading on food. In poorly designed studies, that's effectively what's happening. Boundaries are lifted and insulin surges erase gains. In clinical practice, it's more like a guided reset. Fasting creates the opening, and intentional, moderate eating keeps the pathway open so fat can still be drawn from storage. Consider what the evidence actually shows. Research consistently finds that intermittent fasting and time restricted eating, when followed without overcompensation, deliver weight loss and metabolic benefits comparable to traditional calorie restriction, PMC MDPI Wikipedia. The secret isn't that fasting burns more calories, it's that it changes the hormonal landscape. But when studies allow ad libitum eating after fasting, participants often eat too much, and the insulin response simply locks away both the new energy and the stored fat the fast becomes neutralized. Clinical practitioners see this regularly. A patient who reports fasting perfectly, but then describes huge meals because they're really hungry. And fasting gives me permission. The result? No weight loss. Or worse, weight regain. That's not fasting failing, that's fasting being sabotaged. The lesson from both the literature and practice is this: fasting must be coupled with mindful, balanced eating during the window. Fast without the binge, fast while eating sensibly, and let the insulin stay low enough, long enough for fat burning to actually happen. Without this balance, fasting becomes nothing more than a pendulum swinging. Food restriction leads to rebound consumption, insulin spikes, fat storage, frustration, and eventually back to square one. With mindful windows, though, fasting becomes a sustainable tool, a true hormonal reset, not just a temporary deprivation trick. One of the most important parts of fasting isn't actually the fast itself. It's how you break it. The hours without food set the stage, but what you choose to do once you finally eat determines whether your body continues burning fat or shifts right back into storage mode. The good news is that a few simple practical strategies can make fasting both sustainable and effective, helping you avoid the trap of overeating once the fast ends. The first strategy is to plan your meals ahead of time. Hunger can cloud judgment, and after a long fast, it's easy to grab whatever is convenient. Often processed, calorie-dense foods that spike insulin and shut down fat burning. But when meals are planned in advance, you remove the guesswork and avoid impulsive choices. Think of it like grocery shopping with a list. Without a plan, the cart fills up with snacks you didn't need. With a plan, you stay on track and finish feeling satisfied rather than guilty. Second, focus on whole, unprocessed foods. These are the kinds of foods your body actually recognizes and handles well. Vegetables, lean proteins, nuts, seeds, fruits, and minimally processed grains. Highly refined foods tend to trigger overeating because they digest quickly, spike insulin, and leave you hungry again shortly after. Whole foods, on the other hand, provide steady energy, keep insulin responses lower, and naturally limit the urge to keep eating. A third principle is to prioritize nutrient density over calorie quantity. It's easy to think in terms of numbers. How many calories does this meal have? But calories don't tell you whether a meal provides what your body actually needs. Nutrient-dense food supply vitamins, minerals, fiber, and protein that keep your body nourished and satisfied. Two meals with the same calorie count can have completely different effects. One might leave you sluggish and craving more, while the other leaves you full, energized, and balanced for hours. When it comes time to break the fast, start with foods that stabilize appetite rather than fuel overeating. A simple combination of protein, fiber, and hydration works best. Protein signals satiety to the brain, fiber slows digestion, and water helps regulate fullness cues. A plate of eggs with vegetables, a small salad with chicken, or even a handful of nuts with fruit can be far more effective than diving into bread or sweets right away. This way, you ease your body back into feeding mode without sending insulin soaring. Perhaps the most important mindset shift is to remind yourself, eat normally, not excessively. Fasting doesn't give you a free pass to eat double or triple just because you've been without food for a while. The purpose of fasting is to allow insulin to fall and fat burning to resume. Overeating reverses that benefit immediately. Eating normally means giving your body the right amount of nourishment to satisfy hunger, not making up for every missed bite. Over time, you'll notice that your appetite actually adjusts to match this rhythm. You won't feel the same drive to overeat once your body gets used to fasting. These strategies make fasting sustainable in the long run. Instead of bouncing between extremes, restricting during the fast and overcompensating after, you create a steady, balanced pattern that your body can adapt to. It's not about perfection or rigid rules. It's about finding a rhythm where fasting feels natural, meals are satisfying, and progress continues without constant struggle. The confidence comes from knowing that fasting doesn't require elaborate plans or complicated formulas. It just requires awareness. Plan meals ahead, choose real foods, focus on nutrients, break the fast wisely, and remember that normal eating is enough. When you apply these simple steps, fasting stops being a challenge to survive and becomes a lifestyle you can thrive on. When people struggle with fasting, it's rarely the fasting itself that's the problem. The real stumbling block comes afterward in the eating window. The biggest mistake is overeating once the fast is over, and this single habit can cancel out all the benefits. Fasting lowers insulin, opens the door to fat burning, and shifts the body to using its own reserves. But overeating slams that door shut, spikes insulin, and sends the body right back into storage mode. This is why so many people fast diligently and see little to no progress. The fast worked, but the eating window erased it. We've seen how this happens at every level. From a physiological standpoint, fasting is not just skipping meals, it's a hormonal strategy. It gives your body a break from constant insulin stimulation, allowing fat cells to release their stored energy. That's the real benefit, not simple calorie reduction. Yet if the eating window is treated like an invitation to binge, insulin soars and fat burning stops. The carefully crafted hormonal shift is undone in a matter of minutes. We've also tackled the myths that confuse the picture. A calorie is not just a calorie because hormones decide what happens to those calories. 6 small meals a day, even if they add up to the same number, will never produce the same result as fasting because insulin remains elevated and fat stores stay locked. Fasting works precisely because it lowers insulin for long enough to unlock stored energy. That's why studies that allow unrestricted eating after fasting often look disappointing. The problem isn't fasting itself, it's the design. When participants are told to eat whatever you want during the eating window, overeating inevitably follows, insulin rises, and the potential benefits are lost. In real-world practice, when people fast and then eat mindfully, results are consistent and powerful. That's where practical strategies come in. Planning meals ahead prevents impulsive choices. Choosing whole, unprocessed foods keeps insulin responses lower and hunger under control. Prioritizing nutrient density ensures the body gets what it needs without overloading calories. Breaking the fast with protein, fiber, and hydration eases the transition back into eating without driving overeating. Above all, remembering to eat normally, not excessively, preserves the benefits of the fast and allows the body to continue drawing from its fat stores. These small adjustments make fasting sustainable and effective long term. The message is clear: fasting does work when done correctly. It's not about punishing yourself with deprivation or rewarding yourself with excess. It's about balance. It's about giving your body time to lower insulin, access its stored energy, and then providing it with the right fuel when the eating window arrives. If you approach fasting as a license to indulge, it will fail. If you approach it as a way to restore balance, it will succeed. This shift in mindset is the real takeaway. Fasting isn't about suffering through hunger and then overeating in relief. It's about trusting that your body already has energy stored and letting it use that energy naturally. Once you stop fighting that process and start working with it, fasting becomes simple, logical, and sustainable. So as you move forward, Remember the key principle: don't undo your fast by overeating. Keep it balanced, keep it mindful, and let your body do what it was designed to do. Start fasting smarter today and let your body tap into the energy it's been saving for you all along.